listening to Chicken in a Bag, a real-life comedy podcast designed to lighten you up, make you laugh, and get you off your ass. Now that's Kristin being Kristin. Are you freaking kidding me? Start the show!
All right, everyone. It is Chicken in the Bag podcast. Today we have another episode. So if you're a parent trying to get something done, your kids are finishing school, trying to decide what to do about college, what to do about life, then damn that we have the episode for you. Today we're going to be talking with Melissa Pyrch. She is an English teacher and she is writing a book called Beyond the Bell. So we're going to get Melissa in here and we're going to talk about all those things that are facing us in life. Hello, Melissa, and how are you?
Hi, Kristin. How are you? Thanks for having me today.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. I stumbled upon you on Instagram. And you and I had a little conversation, and I just love the fact that you're writing a book because I always say there's so many things in school they don't teach you that you need in the real world. And your book that you're writing is Beyond the Bell, Life Lessons, right? That school failed to tell.
Yeah, lessons high school failed to teach. You know, I think that we get a lot out of high school. I think we get a lot out of college, and there's a lot we don't get. And that's kind of what I wanted to fill this book with, because I found that I was teaching Shakespeare and I was teaching of mice and men and how to write powerful essays. And kids were then sticking around and asking me about college and how I figured out my major and how I wound up being a teacher and just all the things that we are curious about on our road to growing up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what's interesting, what I love about when you're a kid, right? I think that there's something that's interesting about some kids have a passion right from the time they're little. Like they're on a path and they like know exactly what they're going to do. And then there's some kids that just kind of like, they're just kind of trying things out. And sometimes mom and dad are really like involved in their lives and they push them into things. And sometimes they don't even know who they are because they have all these other voices pushing them into certain directions. And then I think what's interesting for these high school kids is all of a sudden they have to decide who they're going to be. They're like 17 and 18, like, what are you going to do? And there's such a push for college. And, I agree with both. I think that there's sometimes the college is necessary. And I think that sometimes college isn't necessary for certain kids. And I don't think that we have that conversation enough. And I don't know how you feel as a teacher, but I think that's what's interesting. I always talk to kids like when school's ending and they're about to go to college. I'm like, what are you going to study? I'm like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you like? And they go this. I go, well, how much money do you think you want to make? And they go, I don't know. And I go, well, you got to kind of think about those two things. Because I think if you can kind of mend making money and doing something you like, you kind of hit the whammy of like the double whammy of like good stuff. So what are some of the things that you see that your kids are kind of like, do a lot of them know what they want, or some of them completely like have no idea?
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you're right. I think we have a couple of different types of kids. And I was not that kid that woke up, one day and was like, I know my passion. And I wasn't the kid that knew what I was doing, honestly, even when I was in college. And when I started to do my undergrad, I was originally thinking, I'll go to college and I'll just be Oprah. Like, that seems like something I can do, right? I mean, I could talk to people. So great. That's what I'll go to college for. And clearly there's one Oprah, right? So that wasn't really where I think I was going to go. Mm-hmm. So I wound up kind of figuring it out by taking online tests and speaking to career counselors and really figuring out what I loved and what I always excelled in. And that's kind of how I wound up being a high school teacher. I thought teacher meant you hang out with little kids, and I knew I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. And
it wasn't until a couple of conversations that I figured out, wait a second, high school is probably where I would be happy. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I took one of those online tests, and this is kind of a funny story that I share in my book immediately. The test spit back to me that my dream job would be a funeral director. Oh yeah. So you can imagine how devastated I was when that came back. I'm like, a funeral director, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. I want to hang out with people, but they need to breathe, right?
Right.
So, you find this crazy winding path, and I think everybody lands where they're supposed to be, but you've got to be willing to just let the wind blow and not get so scared. And I think what you said about not listening to those voices chirping is so important.
Yeah.
Because I think as kids, we want to please the adults in our lives that are supporting us. So it is easy to fall into that line of work that maybe a cool aunt is in, or an uncle is in, or your mom thought, hey, this will be a good job for you. Or the next thing you know, we're in a career that doesn't fit us. And I think you're right. If you can marry what you love to do and make money at it, that's great. You're also going to have to do things you don't like to do. And you've got to embrace that too, right?
100%, 100%. I'll tell you, I was one of those kids. I was very strong-willed. I always knew, I thought I wanted to be an actress. I thought I wanted to be on stage. And I can remember when it was time to go to college, all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, wait, if I go to college, I'm going to own all these bills. How am I going to pursue being an actress? And I don't know where I thought of this back in it was 89 when I came up with this idea. And I sat my parents down, I'm not going to college. And they were like, what do you mean you're not going to college? Yes, you are. I said, no, listen, hear me out. I'll go to community college. I'll get an associate's. I'll have a base. And then if I want to go back, I can always go back. And to be honest with you, I'm so glad that I had that strong will at such a young age, because it really served me well and made me make the right decision, because I wound up being a bartender for the past 20 years. And it worked well for me because it felt that need. It filled the need of being an entertainer, talking to people. I get to teach a little bit, but not like all day long. And it worked. And I got to be home with my son all the time. So for me, it worked out well. And I didn't have all these college loans because I work with so many people in the bar business that all have college degrees, and they're working beside me sometimes. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're paying all these loans.
That's
so
right.
I wish parents would be a little bit more open to maybe have that dialogue with their kids sometimes and be like, okay, well, tell us why. And say like, no, you're crazy. You're going to college. You're going to get the degree. Because I just talked to somebody the other day. Their kid just went to college and now he's going to become a firefighter. And he could have done that without, and I know your husband's a firefighter, right? Your husband's in the fight, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's interesting. So I think that we have to sometimes allow your kids to have the comfortableness to be able to come to you with ideas and sit and listen to it, digest it, and try to discuss it a little bit, because it might save them a little bit of aggravation. It might save you a little bit of money. It might save them a little bit of money paying all those college loans. So I love the fact. Melissa, you're a mom of 3 little ones, 3, 7, and 9. You're a teacher, an English teacher in high school, and you're writing a book. I thought I juggle a lot. Now you're juggling a lot too. I can't even imagine what it's like to try to write a book with 3 little ones and run it around. Where do you find the time, and what made you want to embark on this this task?
Yeah, I've always loved writing, and I always saw myself someday putting something out there to share with people. And like you, I think my parents were always supportive. It sounds like your parents, that's not the easy thing sometimes for parents to support the path that is not safe.
Right.
So, I think that's really important for parents to hear, if I just wanted to add that. But as far as writing my book, I think I always knew that this was inside of me. And it took me a while to figure out what exactly I wanted to share. And teaching high school kids kind of helped me to figure that out.
Right.
Yes, it's very difficult to find the time when you're, again, doing a day job, raising kids. But I got to say, Ed Milet has this amazing method. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with it, but he pieces one day into 3. And that method of bending time has been a game changer for me. So wow. It's that 6 to 12, 12 to 6, right? It's kind of bending the time. So when my kids go to bed, I am writing. Sometimes from 10 to 12, sometimes 9 to 1. It depends on what I have in me. Mm-hmm. But I've just been a person that has always known that if you want to get something done, you're either going to do it or you're not. And, I really have tried hard to stay focused. I think also it's important that you just can't focus on everything at once, right? Like, I see these people, they want to start a business. They want to continue their day job. They want to redecorate their home. Like, you got to stay laser focused on that one thing. And for me, over the past year and a half, it's really been writing this book. And while other opportunities have popped up, I've had to turn down and say, nope, this is the path I'm on. And I'm married to this path right now. And that's kind of how I got it done. It has not been easy. It is not done. I'm still in the editing process, but you've got to also be patient with your goals too. And know that, it takes time. It just does, especially when you're a family, part of a family, and you're a mom, or, even a college kid. You're juggling. We all are.
I love the fact you said it takes patience, because I will say patience was never like my best virtue. I really wasn't. And I'm glad. I think I really got patient in this past year. And I think maybe it might've been just because life was different. Maybe it slowed down for a little bit, and then it kind of made me prioritize things. And I think also just watching a lot of things over the past year made me really rethink a lot of things and like what really matters, what's important. And then watching other people, I think, is a really great way that I learn and observe, and then I do sometimes. And I think sometimes when you kind of sit back and watch a little bit, you learn a lot and go, oh, I wouldn't want to do that, or I do want to do that. And I'm sure you've gone through this with the whole book process. Like, I want to write my book this way, or I want my book to be like this, or maybe you came up with one idea and then it kind of changed as you started to sit down and really think about the stories that you wanted to tell. One of the things I love that you said, and I think this is about life, like finding your journey. Writing a book, you have to kind of find your niche or your genre, right? And I think that's kind of like I threw my pen across the room. I think that's the journey that you take. How did you find your genre, and how did it kind of develop for what kind of book you were going to write?
So it's funny because I tried to write a fiction book about teenagers because that's what I knew. And I was like, all right, I'm going to write a book for my kids and a cool story that I think they'll love to read. And it just didn't, no matter how hard I tried, like, when you're trying to really force something, I'm like, this is not, it's sucking the life out of me. And I think when you're pursuing anything, once it starts to suck the life out of you, that's not the right thing that you should be doing. Right. I really believe that. And you have to kind of trust your instinct. And I did. And I kind of put that project to the side. I mean, I wrote almost 150 pages of that. So it was hard for me to abandon it, but I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. Mm-hmm. So then I had kids, right? So I'm like, I'm going to write a picture book. Maybe this is it, right? And I started to write these picture books. And once again, I remember people approaching me and saying, your book is probably so funny because you just always make us laugh and you're sarcastic. And I'm like, really? Because that book is, none of these books are funny.
Right.
Like, my personality was not in them at all.
That's so funny.
It wasn't funny. There was no sarcasm in it. It was not, I'm a very in-your-face person. I think that's why we click, right? And I'm like, this picture book sounds like, either Dr. Seuss wrote it or this really sweet kindergarten teacher wrote it. And that is not me.
Right.
So I had to push that aside too. Honestly, I was like, okay, nope, next. And then one night I was sitting in my house and I just started writing down a bunch of the stories that I always told in my classroom about my own experiences, right? When you went to college, were you afraid? I'm like, was I afraid? Yeah. Like, I had my father pull over on the side of the road because I thought I was going to be sick. I was so nervous, and all these different stories over the years that I could see the dynamic in my classroom change when I told them. All of a sudden, the kids that weren't really paying attention to the grammar lesson were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And I started to write these things down, like that story I just told you about, being told I'd be a great funeral director, like funny things like that that happened in my life, stories about heartbreak and just recovering from that. Also dealing with moments in my life where I had to deal with anxiety, which a lot of kids are dealing with today. Yeah. And I just found that these stories were rolling right out of me. And it was the most natural thing for me because it was the same writing voice that I use to address my students every day and that I knew worked for teenagers.
I love it.
So it was a winding road and a lot of manuscripts shelved to get here. But I think you've got to just go with it when you're trying to figure it out. You can't be afraid to switch courses. Like I tell my kids, put your blinker on, get in the left lane and go. Because it's just what it is. And if you're stalling in the right lane, it's probably the wrong lane for you.
I totally agree with you on that. I'm such a big fan of that because I always think that, what we do in society is we push everybody into like that middle lane. Exactly. Right. And sometimes you're sitting in so much traffic on the damn highway because everybody's in the same lane.
Right.
So like if you have to take a little left or you take a different detour and you take a couple back roads to get there, it might have taken a little bit longer, but then sometimes like, damn, what a beautiful place. I didn't even realize this town existed. And I think that's what makes life so exciting. And I think that's what's so cool. Like, I love the way that you found your voice in your writing, because I think that's sometimes what it is when you're sharing your story or people want to start a business or they want to help people. A lot of times you get in this rut where you're trying to fit into somebody else's, game plan or the way somebody else coaches or the way somebody else writes or the way somebody else, presents himself in a thing. But when you learn to really just tap in, like, what do I talk about all the time? Oh, that's what I should be doing. Exactly. And I think it's such a great premise for a book too, because I think there's just so many parents don't realize that what opportunities they have when they have their kids at the kitchen table, or when they're driving them to school in the morning. Like, I'm a big believer in sharing stories of your past experiences. My mom always did it. My grandparents always did it. And I had my mom on a couple of weeks ago because, a lot of the things that I learned was because my mom opened up to having conversations, which makes you actually feel more comfortable to work through your own stuff, because you're like, hey, how did you feel about this, Mom? Well, I felt like this. And how did you deal with this? And da da da. And I think that that's what so many parents don't realize. They have so much knowledge to give their damn kids, and they don't even realize it, and they just don't even share those stories with them.
You know what it is? I think people forget what it is like to be a teenager sometimes. And it's lonely, and it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's boring, and it's interesting, and it's frustrating. It's all these things, right? It's just the total tornado of emotion. And I'm in that tornado every day. So it's hard for me to forget what it's like to be a teenager because I'm with them all the time, So I think that what people forget is that teenagers, like people, like all of us, just want to feel connected. They want to feel like they're not alone. And they want to feel like people have been here before and it's all going to be fine. Yeah. Right. And it feels so big and scary when you're going through it.
Right.
But we've all been through it. We've all been in that seat, in that high school seat, thinking, where am I going next? And it feels big, but we've all been there, and everybody, for the most part, is okay. Yeah, we've got bumps in the road. Mm-hmm. I tell my kids, fill yourself with good people, fill your life with good people, lead with love, do the best you can to be a kind person, and the rest of this stuff will figure itself out. Right?
Yeah. I love that you say that, because my mom says something like that. Like, everyone expects kids to always be happy. Like, why would they be so stressed out? They're just a kid. My mom's like, they have feelings, they have emotions, they have good days and bad days, just like a damn adult does. And I think a lot of parents just think like, oh, he's a teenager. What the hell is she so worried about? Right. And there's so much pressure with being a teenager now. I love the fact, I think when you work with younger people, sometimes it keeps you young, and it kind of keeps you on a different level than sometimes parents that are in an office all day long. So I think maybe being a teacher in a high school, you're listening to them, you're hearing their stories, you're hearing their concerns, so you're maybe a little bit more abrupt. I think also for me, like as a bartender, being with young people, I always feel like I'm more connected to a variety of ages. Yeah. I'm constantly talking to people from all different levels, and I'm hearing a lot of things. So, and I think that that's why I always like to bring up different topics on this show, because you never know who's watching or listening or who's going through something. So there might be a parent right now, like, my kid hates school and I don't know what the hell they're going to do with their life. And you can be like, well, hey, what can they do? And what are they good at? Focus on that, because they might do really well. And I think that's what I had to do with my son. I mean, he had learning issues, and I didn't know. I just put college out of my, it wasn't even on my radar when he was little, because I was like, I'm just trying to learn how to read, and I'm just learning how to have social skills. And that was like my focus. And so for me, I kind of had to put myself in a different path, kind of like taking that blinker and going to the right. So I had to do the opposite of what a lot of other parents did. And it's sometimes that's lonely, because everyone else is on one path and you're like on your own little journey. They don't understand why you're over here and they're all doing this,
Well, you have to meet your kids, like you have to meet people where they are, right? Yep. I mean, I think the other piece of this, and now being a parent, I can understand it. We all want wonderful things for our kids.
Right.
So it is hard to not, push them into that safe zone, into that space where we think that they'll be successful and happy, because that's all we want for our kids.
Right. Exactly.
Sometimes, and I think a lot of times, our idea of happy and success is not what they're thinking at all. And we have to embrace that, right? Yeah. Because we're just not, they're living their own lives, and we have to allow them to do that. Yes. And we want to be a part of it. That's really all. I always tell my students when I leave, I go home, talk to your parents, because that'll make them happy. That's all they want. They want you to talk to them. They want you to share with them. And if we push too much, and if we set an expectation that almost is impossible to meet. I think you said it, right? Telling kids to be happy all the time. None of us are happy all the time. That's just setting them up for failure. Like, there's going to be bad days, guys.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to just embrace people where they are. And I think that's going to make better connections, which ultimately makes us all better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's interesting because I'm sure you see it as a parent, a parent and as a teacher. I mean, that's one of the, I think the biggest thing as a parent is to like let your ego go, because unfortunately, like, you want, like you said, you want to protect them. They're your baby.
Yeah.
You want them to be happy, and you want to fix all these problems for them. And I think one of the things that you said, actions over words. And the other thing is, I think that you, being failure, letting them see the failure, because it lets them know that it's okay. And I think those are two great lessons that it seems like you're teaching your kids, that I think a lot of parents have to realize. You have to sometimes let them skin their knees a little bit. It hurts to see it happen, but they're going to learn how to pick themselves up that way. And if you're constantly preventing them from falling, they're not going to really have the skill set that they need on those bad days. Why was it important for you to like, I think there was a post that you did that you were showing a no, and you were sharing it with your son, like, oh, another no. And he's like, you must be getting really close, right? And talk about that, because my niece shared a video with me on TikTok, and it was about a girl who quit a lot of things. And like the message, I thought it was a different concept of failure is okay. And she's like, I quit this, I quit that, I quit this. And my father was always mad. But then when she got older, she knew how to get out of a bad relationship because she quit it. She knew how to get out of a bad job because she quit it. So I think there needs to be a little bit more of a dialogue about being okay with like walking away from things and letting them feel a little bit. So I don't know if you want to talk about that for a minute, Melissa.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, I think it's important to let kids know that not everything's going to be an A+ 100. Not everything's going to be smooth sailing, and there is going to be rejection. There is going to be failure, and it's really the reaction to that failure, as we all know, that matters the most. I also think showing kids that you can't quit is very, very important, because I think sometimes when you really want something and it doesn't come and there's not that immediate satisfaction, it's the easy way out is to quit, right? It's the easy way out. And I think that, I always tell my kids, well, that's not what we do here. We don't quit. We're not quitters.
Right.
However, that being said, yes, should you listen to your intuition when it's time to move to something else, or when it's time to try it a different way or try something different? Absolutely. But when you know in your gut that this is what you really want, you can't give up on yourself, because no one's going to care about your dream more than you do.
Right.
That is it. Nobody cares. Honestly, there's not anybody in this world that cares about my book getting published more than I do. Not a literary agent, not anybody. So it's up to me to make that happen. And I think the same goes for everything. If you want to get into law school, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. So how bad do you want it? And if you do quit it, you need to ask yourself, is that really what I wanted? Because if it was, you probably wouldn't have given up.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so true, because I think also right now we have such a society of highlight reels, or making things seem like it's so damn easy. And I think the reason I love to have conversations with people that are like really going after things or juggling a lot of things, to say, okay, yeah, it's okay if you have a day job and you're still doing your passion. Not everybody always has their passion be the one that pays their bills.
Right.
And I think that's important for people to understand, because I think they almost feel like embarrassed that maybe they're not good at what they're doing if it's not the only thing that they're doing. And I'm always like, who cares if you're a teacher during the day and you're a writer at night, or whether you're a comedian and you have a day job. Like, a lot of people have two jobs, or sometimes your passion is just something that you like to do because it's for you. Right. Like, you're a dad, or you're a mom, or you have a job, but there's something about you that you love playing the guitar, or you love playing in the band on the weekend. So it's okay to have it both ways. And then if you're trying to make something happen, like you decide like, hey, I really want to start this business and I'm going to go at it. It's not going to be easy. And you have to manage your time the way you said, like the way Ed breaks it down into like 3 time frames. But there's a time to get it done. If you really want to do it, you're going to make the time and you're going to do it. But it's not going to be easy. So you got to
honestly, anybody who's critical of the way you're doing it, they're probably not even trying. Like, I see a lot of people who, and I'm sure you get the same thing. Oh, I always thought about starting a podcast. Oh, I always wanted to write a book. Well, you're not doing it. So, I think it was Brene Brown, right? Who says, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, keep your comments to yourself.
I love that.
I mean, come on. Like, yeah, I'm getting rejected, and yeah, I'm up late at night, and some days I look like hell because I'm exhausted, but I'm in the game, right? Put your helmet on, get in the game, and then you could criticize the way I'm playing it. That's kind of where I'm at.
No, I love that. I think it's so important because I think a lot of people are afraid. And that's what I said. So I think we had this conversation last week because the guest last week was also an educator, and dreams was a big thing we talked about. And that's one of the things I liked about you. I think you said that you like to dream big, and everybody deserves to shine. I love people to dream big, and I think everybody should shine too. And I think that's why I like to highlight other people a lot of times. And what do you like about helping people realize those two things?
You know, I think I'm blessed in my profession because I get to meet kids right on that precipice of going onto that next big thing that they want to pursue. And I have to tell you that it is one of the greatest thrills when I'll have a kid DM me on Instagram, or I'll have a kid send me an email, or they'll make a post, and all of a sudden, you know, they're doing that thing. It is the greatest thrill of my life. Right. It just continues to validate that anything can happen. It can happen. And it really is such amazing fuel for my own life. Like, I think a lot of times people think that the teacher is the one teaching, but I have to say that I've probably learned more from my kids over the last 20 years than they maybe have even learned from me, because, you know, they are just, a lot of times teenagers are fearless.
Yeah.
And it makes, when you're around them, it gives you this kind of confidence that, maybe that, you know what, maybe it is possible, you know, and that is such a gift, right? I mean, my God, what fuel that they give us as adults. So yeah, that's the best part, I think, of watching people succeed, is just that validation that, oh yeah, it's confirmed. It confirms what I feel and what I believe in my own life. It, you know, it's like, there it is again.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said that they're fearless, because I think that's so true, because I think that's what it is when, like, you look at kids, you know, when you look at your kids, like, that's what's awesome about being a parent, is that you're getting to get that fearless time again. You get to, like, see through their eyes. And I think that's a lot of times your kids are sometimes teaching you more than you teach them. I think there's like a reciprocal thing. And I think if more people were open, and that's what I like about, like, having a teenage son. Like, my son just turned 18, and like, he like taught me so much when he was younger, because I had to learn so much to help him. And then to see him come into his own and really be confident and be himself. I love the fact that, like, I think I'm fearless being myself. I mean, this kid, really is just like, he is his own individual, could give a shit less what anyone else is doing. And I love it, because I'm just like, there's just like, he's just on his own path, and he does his thing. And like, and it's a great thing to see when somebody owns their own strength, you know, or they really know who they are. Because I really feel like, you know, sometimes when you have a strong-willed kid, like my little sister has a daughter and son that are both a little bit strong-willed, and I'm like, listen, I know they're strong-willed, but you're gonna be happy about that, because they're gonna go further in life.
It's gonna pay off.
Right. It's just learn how to corral that conversation sometimes.
Yeah, as long as we as parents can get through it, it's gonna be magic later on.
Because the world is always trying to stifle you, or you know, break down your shine, or they're always trying to, like, compete or put people down. So, like, if you really believe, like, I'm going to get this shit done, then that's a great mindset, because that's what's going to take in order to be competitive in a certain thing, or really go after those dreams that you want to do. Yeah. Another thing I want to ask you, Melissa, about the book, you know, you were saying how, like, there's a lot of, like, no's, and you took a journey to get to the book that you actually wanted to write. There's a lot of different ways to write books. You know, a lot of people do the self-publishing. Some people do the literary. The literary one that you're taking is the harder route, because it's getting the people to be like, yes, we want this book and we want to work with you. What made you decide that you wanted to take that route? Was it just felt more for you what you wanted?
Yeah, you know what? As a kid, I can remember this drive in me as a kid, thinking, you know, I would go into, gosh, at the time it was probably Borders or one of those bookstores. Now it's Barnes and Nobles. I took my kids in. And I remember thinking, like, what a magical place this is. And I remember thinking, if I could put a book on the shelf, like, oh my gosh. I mean, I was little. I remember thinking, you know, even like those journals that they sell, I remember thinking, wait a second, if I just fill this thing up, I can have a book in Barnes and Noble. Yeah. You know, that was always the dream. And I do think dreams change and take new shape. But for me, and I think it's the English teacher in me, this is the path that I really committed to. And believe me, I've had many people say, why don't you just self-publish, or why don't you just put a chapter out there for free, or why don't you do it this way, or why don't you do it that way? And while I've looked at all those different avenues, what feels like it fits for me is that traditional publishing route. And I know it's the hard way,
Yeah.
but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the hard work. I'm okay with doing it, again, the most difficult way possible, because I think you've got to believe in yourself. I think you've got to believe in what you're doing. You've got to believe in yourself, even when people keep telling you, do it this way or do it that way, and they keep rejecting you. Everybody gets rejected. Like you said it best, we see highlight reels. We see people in the fourth quarter when they're winning.
Yep.
That is not the way most things go.
Right.
And that's not the way most small businesses go. A lot of people today want to be entrepreneurs, which is wonderful.
Totally agree.
You really got to do it eyes wide open and know that there's going to be long nights, rejection, a lot of brick walls that you're going to have to crash through. And it can happen. Yeah. But you've got to be willing to stick it out. And that's kind of my mindset with going this traditional publishing route. So we'll see. I believe that's the first step.
Too. I think you're going to do it. And I think that the book is going to really help a lot of people. And I'm hoping that parents read it too, because it maybe might then be like, oh, damn, I didn't think to share that aspect of myself with my kid, But I agree with you. I think there's so much. I think it's so hard for so many people to understand when you have a vision or a dream, I don't know how your husband is or the people around you, like when you really have this vision, and a lot of people look at you like, why? Like, aren't you exhausted? Like, it hasn't even made it. Like, I think so many people want the tangibles. They want the money, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the process. But I think when you really believe in something, or you really have something that's inside you that you want to give to other people, I think sometimes you're okay with it taking a little bit of time. And I think the people that I don't understand that, they're just like, don't you want like just to get it done, or don't you? And I think that everyone's different in that aspect when you're pursuing that thing that you want to go after. And I think that's one of the things that I've really learned over this past year. Like, I'm like, okay, what do I want to have be what my next step is? But I enjoy like the conversations, and I learned something. So I think that's what's really interesting about having options nowadays. Like, you can literally build anything you want to build, or go after any dream you want to go after. It's just that you have to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
I think you want to go bang through those walls, or you just want to sit there and be like, oh, I gave it a couple months and it didn't really work out. So fuck it, I'm just going to go back.
It's like, what you said, how many hours and days and years have you spent thinking about how this is all going to turn out, or how you visualize it happening? And it's like, nobody has thought through it more than you, right?
Right.
So you've got to kind of trust your gut when people have different ideas for you. And you just might run into the right person that does give you something that can take you to the next level. And, like I said, you got to be willing to continue to put yourself out there and talk about your journey. A lot of times people want to keep their biggest dreams quiet in fear that they won't achieve it. And I'm the opposite of that. I think put it out there. What do you have to lose? Right. You never know who's listening. You never know who you're going to meet, who just might put you right under their wing and shoot you to the next level. So if you read a lot of books about people that have made it, it's typically that one connection that changed everything. So you got to talk about it. You've got to put yourself out there and be confident that you're proud of who you are and what you're going after.
I totally agree with you, because I'll tell you, every time I have put myself out there in like the craziest ways, or been like just like knocking on damn doors, it's when all the opportunities that come for me. And it's because other people would be like, oh my God, Kristin, you're crazy. I can't believe you're going to do it that way.
Well, you have to be a little crazy too. That's
my nickname is Crazy K. One of my coworkers call me Crazy K. I actually did a joke about it one time. And but I think but for me, one of the things, I just know that if you don't put it out there, right? I think there's that old Milton Berle quote that says, I think opportunity is when preparation and opportunity meet, or something like that. I forget what the quote is, but that's literally what happened for me. Like, a lot of the things that have happened for me is because I didn't care that people thought I was crazy, that I kept like harassing somebody or DMing somebody or showing up to something and introducing myself to somebody. And then somebody's like, wow, oh wait, what do you do? They don't know what you do if you don't tell them what you do. Yeah. So nobody knows that you're trying to get a book out if you don't tell anybody you're trying to get a book out. Nobody knows that, you know, you're trying to start a business if you don't ask other people they want to get involved in it. So I think that that's part of the process. You have to be willing to kind of put yourself out there in the world. And if you don't, then you got nobody to blame but yourself that you want to hold on to it. I think that's the worst thing, is to have a dream or an aspiration, and because of a fear, you didn't go after it, and like it stayed inside of you, you know, and you didn't give that gift to somebody or give the gift to the world.
Yeah, I think that is also the biggest motivation, is if your biggest fear is not making that dream a reality, then you know you're on the right track. You know, it's more important for me to do this than it is for me to fail or hit tough times.
Yeah. What are some of the things now that when this book is done, and I know you can get out there eventually, because I know there's gonna be more than one, so that we're gonna put that into the universe right now. So
yeah, second book is gonna be for parents. Second book, definitely. I already have it in my head. I'm already mapping it out. It's going to be right to the parents of all these teenagers that I've been talking to over the year, and letting them know that you're doing okay, you're doing fine. Being a parent of a teenager is hard.
I love that.
It's okay, and it's not a reflection of who you are as a parent if your kid doesn't do what you think he or she should do. Just because your kid doesn't get into an Ivy League school doesn't mean you failed.
Yeah, so yes. I see, Melissa. I knew that you were going to have a phase two, because I think those will go really well together. And I think that's so important, because I can remember, you know, my son's dyslexic, and I remember I watched a movie about dyslexia, and this guy in the documentary, they didn't think that he was going to be able to go on to college. Like the guidance counselor was like, basically, oh, you'll never go to college. And he couldn't believe it. And then eventually somebody did believe it, and he got into a community college. He got C's and he got a degree. And so his theme in that movie was C's get degrees, right? And I can know that there's so many parents out here that are just making their kids almost like sick about their report cards, right? And I never understood that, because I was kind of like, you know, I can remember my niece was a perfectionist, and she was finishing school in high school, and she's getting ready to go off to college. And she was like, oh my God, my grades, blah, blah. Like, oh my God, you know what they're going to ask you at your first job? She goes, what? I go, what you got in like 12th grade math? She goes, are they? I go, no, they're not going to give a shit. She started laughing, because I just try to like make her lighten up, because she's so hard on herself. And I was like, I love the fact that you're so worried and you're such a diligent student, but you've just got to breathe a little bit, because you're going to make yourself so sick and not enjoy the process. And now here she is, she's in her last year of like physical therapy school at like a really great college. And so she's almost there. And I remind her every day when she's mad about her grades, or she doesn't think she's doing well enough, I go, you're still here. You know how many kids you started with in this program that already dropped out of that program? You're still here in your final year. Give yourself a pat on the back, breathe a little bit, and be happy where you're at. And she's like, you're right. And I think that that's what's so important. Sometimes your kids just need you to just like, instead of like tell them what they're not doing right, give them a pat on the back of where they actually are, so they can actually breathe a little bit.
Absolutely.
Because I just think it's so crazy to put them under such pressure. They have the rest of their lives being under such pressure.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Yeah, I think balance, right? That's what we're all looking for. And sometimes, yes, your attention's going to be in different spaces, but at the end of the day, breathe, because you're right. It's going to be fine. And getting ourselves totally upset about a math grade is, yeah, you should care. Yeah, you got to work harder perhaps, but your life will go on.
Right. You're probably still getting okay. And if they don't get into the best college, that's okay. It's your own, like, you know, like, all right, that's life. I think that's another thing that I see a lot of parents, like, you know, they're like, oh, they're just as devastated if certain things don't happen for the kids. I'm like, that's an opportunity to talk about it and say,
yeah, I mean, kids have been I can't tell you how many tears I've had in my room. I didn't get into the college, my dream college. I said to them, if you didn't get in, that wasn't the right place for you. If it was your dream college, if it was the right place for you, you'd be sailing right in there. And guess what? They'd be embracing you. If they're not, they're lost. There's a better fit for you. You don't want to go to a college where you're begging to stay all the time, that it's so hard that your life is miserable and you can't make new friends and meet great teachers because you're under so much stress. That's not the right college for you. And as parents, I think the best thing we can do is let our kids know that it's okay. You'll find, if you really want to go to college, trust me, somebody will take your money. I promise you that, right? They're happy to take your money. You'll find a good place for you. And I'm a big advocate for post-high school education and college, and I have all the degrees, right? But it's not for everybody. It's just not. And you'll figure it out, and you'll find the right place if that's what you want. And if you don't, you'll find another path that's going to be perfect for you.
Melissa, I love that. I just want to, as we wrap up, I would love to touch upon that, because I think that's such a great message. What a great teacher you are to make them understand that, because that when you think about that, that's really a great symbolization of life in general. If you didn't get into that college, it wasn't the right college for you. Just like if that friend was being an asshole, that's not the friend for you. If that kid's not treating you right, he's not the right guy for you. I think that's such a great message for young people to have, because a lot of times we don't say that. We want to figure out why that college didn't take them. We want to focus on that. Like, put it off. Who cares? Focus on the college that does take you, or focus on the person that does want to be in your life, or focus on the person that does want to spend time with you. I love that, Melissa. I think I think you must be such an amazing teacher to have at that formative year for those kids. I mean, it's such a tough time. I think it's such a tough time to be a high schooler too. There's so many outside forces nowadays, and there's so much societal pressure on so many different things. And to have a brain or a personality like you that just kind of like gives them a little bit of reality dose with a little bit of love and caring at the same time. I think what a blessing you must be to so many of the students that have already come through your door.
Thank you. Thank you.
The fact that you're giving them these life lessons, because
it's my passion. It really is. And this class of 2021, watch out, because they're going to be amazing because of everything they've been through this year. And they've really impressed me. And you see them all over social media, and they've figured out so many ways to just be resilient and creative. And I think the future is bright, really. It's exciting. It's an exciting time, even though it's been a tough time.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I want to ask you one more question, because being a teacher, and just, this past year, technology ramped up so rapidly because we had to really learn how to adapt, and like everything's grown so much. Do you, like, I don't know if you know, like, but I think the job force is changing a lot. So do you have any recommendations to parents that are home that are kind of stuck on like this mentality that's going to be this path? Do you think that there's other options that parents that might have that student that might not really be the best college kid? There's a lot more opportunity than people realize.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we have to be open to the reality that some of the jobs our children will haven't even been invented yet. Right? I mean, think about that. Some of the things we're doing right now, even as adults, I mean, who knew what a podcast was? Who knew Instagram? Who knew what a social media manager was? Right? So you've got to really allow your kids to navigate through this, and really kind of be open to whatever jobs that they really find interesting. And it might be a job you as a parent never even heard of, right?
Right. So just be open to that a little bit. Yeah.
Please. My own students will say things to me, and I'll admit, I'm like, wait a second, I never heard of that, or tell me what you're talking about here. Right. And you got to ask your kids questions, keep that dialogue open, and be open as a parent too to researching. If your kids are talking about being a social media manager, for example, or starting a YouTube channel or being a podcast host, and you're not familiar with that world, start doing your research, start getting involved, because that way you can support them and cheer them on. So that would be my advice, is to realize that the lawyer, the doctor, the teacher, right, the nurse, the jobs that we know are great, but there's a lot of jobs out there that we don't even know about yet. And they can be just as exciting, and if not more exciting, and find a real security in life that you didn't even know that was out there.
I agree with you. My son is a big tech kid, and he's into 3D printing. We just got him one for his birthday. And I watched this video yesterday, and this girl's like, you can make all of these things that are in somebody's house for $3 and sell them for $20. So I was like, if you want to pursue your creative stuff on 3D printing, but now I'm like, oh my God, we could start a business just printing the stuff that will sell automatically.
That's it. Graphic designing. Yeah. I mean, I have kids doing all sorts of things that I'm learning about now, because I can't believe some of the things that they've created and that they're able to do, not only in entrepreneurship, but just even digitally. So you've got to be open to it and let your kids lead. Let them lead. Trust me. They know what they're doing.
Doing. Well, I love that. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. If anybody wants to follow Melissa's journey, because she shows you the whole process of what she's going through. She shares a lot with her students. It's what is it? Pyrch Gets Published on Instagram.
Pyrch Gets Published, PYRCH gets published. And yes, I am on Instagram. So hope to see you guys there.
All right. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll be back in next week with another episode. And I hope you guys have a great week and dream big. And everybody deserves to shine. And listen to your kids and open up the dialogue. Have a good one, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of Chicken in a Bag is over. She's got to get back to being a mom, wife, bartender, therapist, comedian, real life stuff. But you can catch more episodes of Kristin being Kristin on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch you next time.